All right, welcome everyone to a Whiteboard Wednesday episode of the Call Sheet Podcast here at the Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Kevin Smith. With me, as always, during the football season is Coach Frank Lasasso, who's been joining me regularly to break down the X and O's of the great game of football. Welcome back, Coach.
Coach, what's going on? Missed you last week.
Yeah, we weren't able to hook up last week. I had to go solo. We were talking trade deadline, NFL stuff. But Wednesday is always my favorite show, man. Get to hang out with you, get to talk X's and O's. And this is an interesting week because here in southern New Jersey and throughout the state of New Jersey, it is championship week in high school football as sectional championships will be decided. New Jersey's a little convoluted the way that they work their playoffs. You got a couple levels of championships. The sectional championships are kind of like regional championships, and if you're fortunate enough to win one, you move on into the state championships, the state tournament. But I wanted to talk with Frank today about championship culture. We're going to talk a little bit about building culture in a football program. How do some of the best teams establish a great culture within their programs? What's it mean to have a championship culture, etc.? So, Coach, let's start with this question. I'll kick this to you. If we're talking culture in general in a program, I mean, you're a head baseball coach at Hamilton High School, longtime football coach. You took over a struggling program, and one of the, much like I did when I came to Ocean City, and one of the first things that you have to do is you have to try to get the culture right. What does that mean?
You need to get everybody on the same page to achieve a common goal. I can remember when you and I took over in Ocean City, and we were in a position where the program had dwindled. Right, it was a once really successful program in the '90s and the early 2000s, and somewhere along the lines things had gone astray, and it became a point where. And some people will understand what we're saying when we say this, and others will not. And it's one thing that I use with our baseball program is that you never refer to it as a team. It's always a program, right? So there's a difference between being a member of the football team and a member of the football program. And to me, what that means is a program is something that is from top to bottom, meaning from a high school standpoint. You're not just talking about the kids who are in 11th and 12th grade who are on the field for you that year, but it's not even the freshmen, the JV, and the varsity, but it even goes all the way down into your feeder programs where you need to establish a relationship where what are our common goals, what's our identity going to be as a community, right, and as a program as a whole. So when I talk to our baseball players and we discuss about being a member of the program, we're not just talking about the varsity baseball team. We're talking about the JV baseball team. We're talking about the freshman baseball team. We're talking about the Hamilton Little League. We're talking about the Waterford Township Little League. We're talking about Folsom Little League. All of those feeder programs have to feel involved in some way to where they know what the end goal is and they know what the standard is at the top of the pyramid, so to speak. But everybody has to work together to understand what are our philosophies, our goals, our pillars of our program, the things that we really want to focus on, and how can we all collaboratively work together to achieve those goals. And I think when we got into Ocean City, one of the biggest issues that we had was our feeder programs were not in line with what we saw as our vision at the high school level.
Yeah, a couple of great points you make. One, the difference between a team and a program is significant. Teams are year by year. You have a different team every year just because of graduation, attrition, etc. But the program remains. The program is the constant. And the best programs are ones where the kids who enter it see themselves as part of something bigger than themselves, see themselves as part of something worthwhile. It's the name on the shirt, the name on the front versus the name on the back, as you hear people reference at times. That's a huge thing. I mean, if you can get kids to identify with a program and not think in terms of individuals or individual teams, that's a big part of establishing a great culture. Your point about feeder programs, huge. Obviously, as public schools, we want to try to do the best that we can to keep all of our kids at home. You know, some of those kids are going to have opportunities to go to private schools. Maybe they'll choose to do so. But, you know, you want to instill in those feeder programs a sense of pride for playing for the local high school. And so it's important, obviously, to be visible, to build a sense of identification with that program. When I took over, and you know this very well, Frank, man, we had a feeder, our main feeder program. The head coach there was had beef with the former head coach at Ocean City and was in ways trying to sabotage the program by funneling the best kids in that feeder program to some of the private schools. That was a battle to try to win that back. So where do you start in the process, right? I mean, if you're trying to build a culture in whether it's a struggling program or maybe a program that doesn't have a strong sense of identity, how do you get the kids to buy in? How do you start?
I think you start by establishing that you're more concerned with the culture, the integrity of and the character of the player and the commitment of the player, as opposed to the players that have maybe all the ability in the world and all the talent in the world, and they're not willing to do things the way that you want it done. Maybe they don't conduct themselves the right way on the field. Maybe they don't conduct themselves the right way in the classroom. Maybe they don't understand their role or how you lead by example or how you speak to your coaches or your teammates. You want to mold your players into, I won't say model citizens, but you want to mold your players into guys that are going to put the program and the team over themselves. You know, you hear that saying, the team, right? Well, in high school world, it's got to be the program. I can remember being a high school football player, and the one movie that we would watch, we would play Saturday afternoon games. We didn't play Friday night games my freshman and sophomore year. And one thing that we did to keep everybody out of trouble on Friday night was we had pizza parties and we would watch a movie. And typically the movie that we watched that our coach would pick had some kind of motivating relevance to either the team or to that week, whatever it might be. And the one movie that we watched a lot of, which, you know, so there are some things in the movies that are questionable, but it was the movie The Program. And there's no better title to the program. But people see it as like, oh, well, you know, there's Latimer is in there and he's on steroids, and you have the running back who's chasing the girl around, and it seemed like, you know, the quarterback had a drinking problem because of his home life. But at the end of the movie, right, it ended up being about the players collectively coming together for the sake of the program. They figured out all those internal issues that they had, right? So you want to establish a culture where the team is going to work together with a team-first mentality and not a me-first mentality. I mean, there's no more cliche saying there's no I in team. But at the same time, if you want to establish a program, you need to basically rid yourself of the guys that have individual motives, the guys that are there for selfish reasons, and you want to establish right away that we are here for the program and the team. We're not here for individual accolades. While, yes, at the high school level, you absolutely care about getting guys into college and getting guys to the next level and helping them succeed beyond 12th grade. But go ask any college coach that's recruiting, you know, what's the number one question you're going to ask a high school coach? And that question is, what kind of teammate are they? Right? These college coaches aren't interested in just the talent. They are also talking about, we want program guys involved in our program. And unfortunately, the way college is going with NIL, the way of the world is with Instagram and social media and self-promotion, it's very difficult these days to run a program where it's free of selfish acts, selfish players. It's just a matter of how do you manage that, right? How do you manage today's world of instant gratification versus how it used to be, where it was like, hey, this is what the coach said to do, so you do it. Those values are being lost in homes of youth athletes. And we were kind of just talking about it, before the show. Everybody wants to just go to and transfer when they don't get their way, or everybody wants to, go where the cameras are. And it's a matter of how do you make players feel valuable in today's world, where they're going to feel valued individually, and they're also going to be willing to be a part of a bigger purpose, right? And as I say, as the baseball coach, we're here for something bigger than baseball, right? So you're constantly promoting that idea of, isn't it great to be a part of something where it's not just about you, where we all have to work together to get to where we want to be. It's rare these days, unless you're able to just flat out recruit, and some schools do it, just recruit all the talent in the world and win on talent alone. And I don't think it's as rewarding to win that way as it is when you say, we are a great team, right? Everybody from the top down matters. When you have that football team and there's 60 guys and all 60 players have a role, whatever that role might be. Whether you're on the kickoff team, you're the holder, you're on the scout team, you're holding bags, whatever it is, you have to make players feel valued from top to bottom and make them believe and understand that everybody matters. And I think that that's critical to developing a program.
Yeah, a couple things in reaction to what you just talked about. High school is rapidly becoming the level at which culture still really matters. Because the NFL is a profession, and we know that that's a separate world. College used to be one where you looked at the traditional powers, the Notre Dames and the Ohio States and the Alabamas, and used to be able to say, like, hey, they have a specific culture there. But NIL and the transfer portal has changed a lot of that. You look at Ohio State, they win the national championship last year. They graduate like 16 dudes who go to the NFL. They have a bunch of transfers, and then they just go out and they hire a whole new team. They bring in all these new guys. That's really the world of major college football now. High school's still a level, though, where all the things that you just referenced matter. And I wish that I'd known that my first year as a head coach. And you were with me. We thought we had some pretty good football players returning my first year. We thought we had a pretty good senior class, and we thought we could win some games. And what I didn't understand, and I don't think really any of us on the staff got at that point, was they might be good football players, but when they're showing up late to practice, when they're not giving you a great effort, when they're skipping every Tuesday of school because they're quote unquote sick, when you know that they just don't want to practice on Tuesday because it's your hardest day of practice, etc. It doesn't matter if they're good football players. You don't have the details right. And I learned that lesson, unfortunately, a couple years in. And it was only once I learned that lesson that we really began to put something special together at Ocean City. We got to the point where it was like, hey, man, you just knew if you showed up in the weight room and you weren't wearing the right color shirt, just turn around. And we would say to them all the time, that's a little thing. You're not wearing the right color shirt in the weight room. So what? Well, if I can't trust you to do this little thing, wear the right color shirt, how can I trust you on Friday night to make a big block, right? A big tackle, a big catch? How can I put responsibility in your hands when you're the kid who can't even wear the right shirt to the weight room session? And those are the little things. I think that when you begin to magnify them, begin to allow you to establish what we know as culture.
Yeah, I mean, the things that you talk about being able to count on guys, being there when it matters. When things got, in our early years in Ocean City, when things got hard, or we were playing an opponent that we knew maybe was a little bit better than we were, it was easy for the kids who weren't committed to just kind of throw their hands in the air and say, well, it is what it is. They're just better than us. But as we established that standard of being in the weight room and committing in the summer and all the off season. Once we turned football into a program, it became an 11.5 month commitment. And once everybody committed to the same thing, when things got hard, guys would be able to pull together because they all knew that they equally were invested in what they were trying to achieve. You know, when we first started and you had 6 guys that were in the huddle were fully invested and the other 5 were just there because they just wanted to play football or because they were there based on talent alone and weren't working hard. They were not all on the same page. They weren't there to in it together, as we would like to say, right? You don't have that collective unit when adversity presents itself, right? And adversity hits you in the face. And it's almost like we had to teach the kids how to win and help them understand. And even when we started to get good in 2015, 2016, 2017, we still didn't know how to win. And the prime example was 2017. We had a great offseason. We had good players. We had guys who were invested. But we almost had guys that were like too invested. And the Cedar Creek game that year kind of just like embodies where we were. We had Cedar Creek, who at that time was a perennial power, a perennial South Jersey champion year in and year out at that point. And we had them beat. We had them on the ropes. We are going in to score on the 30-yard line, maybe even closer than that. And one player on the opposing team cheap shots our quarterback. And instead of picking the quarterback up and turning around and getting him back in the huddle, we retaliate. We either stepped on somebody or threw a punch, resulted in a 15-yard penalty, completely stopped our drive, completely changed the momentum of the football game, and we got beat because we weren't ready to win yet. We had the commitment, we had the tough players, we had the practice habits, but when it got really hard and it got time to show our discipline, we weren't quite there. And that one game, had we won that game, we would have been a high seed and probably would have gone to the finals and played Delsey and lost in the finals that year to Delsey. And instead, we got Delsey in the first round, hung around for a little while, and then got thumped real quickly in the second half when, again, things got hard because we weren't quite there, right? So we still had to learn another lesson on how to win. And it still took another couple of years before we really figured it out.
Yeah.
So
that point about how to win is a tricky one. But I'm going to pick up on something here real quick. You look at the programs that are in the sectional finals right now in South and Central New Jersey. Many of them are programs that just have supremely talented players. There's a lot of talent. And you and I know full well, great players help you become a great coach. I mean, you can grind away and do all the right things, but if you don't have the dudes, there's a ceiling there, and you're not going to be able to get beyond it. But having the players alone won't get you there. And when you look at, I'll just rattle off the names of some of these teams in these sectional finals: Haddonfield, Mainland, Cedar Creek, who you just mentioned, Kingsway, Washington Township. I mean, those are programs that have great culture. They have championship culture. They've been there, right? You were just referencing us as we tried to get there, as we were getting close. These are programs that have been there, and now they expect to be there. Talk to me about this real quick. How does it change? How does it change from being the team that hopes to get there versus the team that expects to be there? Obviously, success is part of the equation, but once you've experienced championship success, what sets in your program that makes it different?
When I was in high school, I was playing for a program that had undergone at that point about 15 years of sustained success. And I think when Pete Lancetta took over the Hamilton football program in 1989, they missed the playoffs his first year, and then they had made it every year after that from 1990 through, I want to say 2014. I think the only years that they missed the playoffs were 1997 and 2012, I want to say. And when you were in that program, you learned quickly as a young kid. I can remember being 8 and 9 and 10 years old. And although my dad coached at the rival Catholic school down the street at the time, at St. Joseph High School, they had a similar culture, but it was also different because it wasn't, they weren't the kids that all grew up together and played together. Even though my dad coached there, and he still gets a little salty about this to this day, he coached at St. Joe, and I was 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. And I knew, you would think like, oh, your dad's a defensive coordinator at a great football program. You're going to go play for your dad. It was not even really a thought of mine. I knew that I was going to go play with my friends for Hamilton High School. And it was just a given that that's what you did, and that's what it was going to be. And you didn't, even as a youth football player in the youth organization, you didn't want to be the team that didn't achieve what everybody else was achieving. It was almost like you were afraid that your legacy was going to be the team that didn't make the playoffs or that didn't make the finals. When I played in high school, 4 years of high school football, we were in the South Jersey finals, I think 2 of the 4 years. Or was it? Yeah, 3 of the 4 years, I'm sorry. 3 out of 4 years in high school, we were in the South Jersey finals. And that was the expectation. Like, you filled out your calendar in June, and you went all the way through the week after Thanksgiving knowing that you were playing football that week. And if you didn't, man, my junior year, we got upset. Pleasantville beat us. We were the 1 seed playing the 8 seed. A team that we had beaten 22-0 at the second week of the season. Turned around and beat us 6-3 on a scoop and score with 3 minutes left in regulation. When I tell you, you don't ever get over that. Like that's just something that we as players will never get over. We don't even talk about that game. When you gather with your teammates and you're at a party and you don't get over it because you felt like you let your community down, because it's not just about the team, the program, it's about the entire community. The entire community remembers that night, and not for a good reason. And part of what motivates you is you don't want to be that group that didn't achieve what the expectation was. You didn't want to be the underachiever. You wanted to be that group that carried the torch and continued that legacy of the success of Hamilton football. So I think that those expectations being established, and we're in a unique town here where I grew up that, everybody went to football on Saturday afternoon and then it turned into Friday nights, but the town lives for football. And, it was a privilege to have played here and be part of that legacy that you grew up from 8 years old wanting to be out on the field. You wanted to be Ron Dorsey, who was 10 years older than me. You wanted to be him. And then when you were out there, it was a privilege to be out there. And that's just something that comes from years of establishing that culture.
Yeah, what you were just talking about really resonates, because here at Ocean City, we've made the playoffs now 9 years in a row. Very proud of that. That's one of the only teams in South Jersey that can claim that. We were up against it though just a couple weeks ago. We had an 8-year streak, but we, not having our best year, entered our final game of the regular season needing a win to make the playoffs, and we had to play Cedar Creek, which is one of the best schools in South Jersey. We had to pull an upset of Cedar Creek to get in, and we were able to do it, man. Our kids, and I think the underlying factor, the biggest reason was what you referenced. They didn't want to be the ones, particularly the seniors. They didn't want to be the senior class that ended the streak. And it's funny because they talked about it afterwards. They were like, Coach, I got text messages from guys who graduated in 2019 telling me, you better not freaking, end this streak. Right? And that's when you talk about a program, that's what you talk about. Guys who aren't even playing for it anymore, but still feel the ownership, still feel a part of it. So it's a long process, man, right? You start with just establishing the norms. What are our norms going to be? What is our standard going to be? And then, like you said, you don't enforce that just during the season. You enforce that for 11 and a half months. That's a year-round process where that gets enforced in the classroom, in the weight room, obviously on the practice and game fields, etc. And then you hope that you can build enough success and have those pivotal wins that instill enough confidence that gets you to a championship level. And then once you're there, it's like, it's like a plant, man. It takes root, it grows roots, it blossoms. We drew in the first round of the playoffs 2 weeks ago, Mainland Regional. They are in the sectional final this weekend for the 4th straight year. Their senior class has been to 4 straight sectional finals. And I will tell you this, they beat us, but I think that they beat us before the game even started because they expected to win that game because they've been there and done that. And we hoped to win that game because it's been now a couple years since we've been back to a championship and we didn't have kids who had experienced it and knew what it took in those moments. So I think when we talk about championship culture, which is what we started the podcast with, right? What is championship culture? It's everything that we just talked about. But once you reach the level where you expect to win and you know what it takes to do it, I think you've achieved what you're looking for.
Yeah, and I think that once you get to that point, right, like coaches, I can remember those years in Ocean City, like we would say, like, we're tired of being cheerleaders. We're tired of having to cheer you and motivate you through every drill and every play during practice and every 7-on-7. We kept saying we're tired of being cheerleaders. Once the players caught on to what we were saying, and then we finally got a group of guys that really believed in it and caught on to it. And when the message starts to come from the players from within, then all of a sudden your job as a coach becomes much easier because they're now all holding each other accountable. Yeah. And it seemed like when we got a group of players that was invested in everything that we said, they believed in whether we told them, it didn't matter who we played. If we told that 2020 group we could win, which we did when we went and played DePaul Catholic, we told them that we could beat this team. This team was a top 10 team in the state of New Jersey, and we were a small public school, and they're in the super conference. We told them that we could compete with them, and they believed it. And they went out and they competed. We didn't win, but we had them on the ropes. We had a 2-score lead. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. They believed it because we told them that they could do it. And had we told the team that from 5 years before, they wouldn't have believed it. They would not have been invested in what we were telling them. So when it starts to come from the players, the program begins to feed itself because the seniors trickle down to the juniors, who trickle down to the sophomores, who trickle down to the freshmen, who then go down and tell their friends in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, hey, this is something that I love playing high school football for Ocean City. I love playing for Mainland or whoever it is. It all kind of begins to feed itself. And you talk about the trickle-down effect, or you just referenced, you're growing a plant. Nick Sirianni, everybody laughed at Nick Sirianni's analogy when he said, we're planting seeds and we're going to keep watering it and it's going to grow. This guy was applying high school ideologies at the professional level and has done it. I mean, say what you want. They won last night based off of their culture. Right? They beat the Packers last night 10-7 because of just what they have grown in that locker room. That it doesn't matter if the offense is off or the defense is off. They believe that they can win. And that's something that, again, championship culture, championship mentality, it's something that everybody wants to have, but you really have to stay at it and keep hammering away until everybody gets on the same page.
Absolutely, and we referenced the names of a lot of these successful programs, and there's a reason why they show up in the finals over and over again. Yes, they're talented. Yes, they have great players, but the culture matters as well. So, Coach, man, great conversation. You gonna head out and see any games Friday night or Saturday?
Last week. I went and watched Cedar Creek and Pleasantville on Saturday. Very, very good football game. Very competitive. 2 well-coached teams. Saturday, Mainland is traveling to Cedar Creek. It's right down the street. I may travel to see that one. I would love, it's not going to happen, I would love to go up and watch my high school coach, Coach Pete Lancetta, who coaches at St. Augustine Prep. I would love to go watch them play St. Peter's Prep up north, but I don't know if I have the 2-hour drive in me. talk about culture and the master mode. He's the best motivator I've ever seen at any level. And I try to embody everything that I do as a coach after what he did and what he instilled in me. And they've struggled a little bit the last couple of weeks, but if I know him the way I think I do, he's going to find something in him to go up there and shock the world, because there's not really many people around who think they're going to go up there. But that's, you talk about culture and establishing expectations. That's just an exciting game to me that I would love to go see. But Mainland and Cedar Creek sounds pretty intriguing to me too.
Yeah, it's going to be a great game. I'd love to go see Kingsway in Atlantic City. That's a they always say in boxing, styles make fights. We got two different styles there. But I'll be honest, Coach. I mean, now that they're putting these games on YouTube and they're streaming them, and I could sit in my living room and have a beverage as opposed to, especially over Atlantic City where that wind's blowing off the bay. I don't know, man. I'm going to try to make it over there, but we'll see if I'm tough enough to do it.
Yeah, the weather's starting to factor in now too.
No doubt. Coach, great conversation, man. As always, appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Coach. Always
Absolutely.
A pleasure.
Yes, sir. All right, best of luck to all those coaches leading their teams into sectional finals games this weekend, and to everybody else. We're right in the thick of it, whether it's college, pro, high school, best time of year for football. Weather gets cold, football gets great. So enjoy, everybody. Until next week, or until Friday here at the Call Sheet, take care. Have a great day.